Hi, grade 8. This is a math video for lesson 7-4. We're going to be dealing with the solving of inequalities by adding or subtracting. I think you're going to find this pretty easy, but I could be wrong. I've been known to be wrong often in the past. Let's take a look at one problem that looks like this. And I'm going to compare it to another problem that has an equal sign in it. How would you do this problem? Well, we want to get h by itself, so we do the opposite of adding 1 to both sides. We do the subtracting of 1 from both sides, and we get an h value of, not 7, 6, right? Guess what? You do this one this exact same way. You just simply ignore that inequality symbol until you're done, right? So I'm going to do h plus 1 minus 1 is less than 7 minus 1. H is less than 6. Done. Done. Now, if you wanted to graph that, you'd create a number line, put the number 6 in the middle, put a 5 here and a 7 here, and we'd ask ourselves, if I put a 5 or a 7 here, which one would make that a true statement? Well, 5 is less than 6, right? So I know I'm going to shade this side because it has the 5 on it. And the second question is, what kind of circle did I put here? Well, with less than, that's an open circle. We're not going to fill the circle. So that would be the graphing of that equation. With me so far? Okay, let's try a second one. Lemon squeezy, easy peasy. How about negative 6 is greater than or equals to g plus 4. Negative 6 is greater than or equals to g plus 4. How would I handle that? Well, how do we get g by itself? We do the opposite of adding 4, which is subtracting 4. And we're going to do it to both sides, subtracting 4, subtracting 4. Over here, we end up with g. The question is, what's this? Subtraction is really adding the opposite of that second number, right? Subtraction is adding the opposite of 4. What's the opposite of 4? Negative 4. And so that's negative 10 is greater than or equal to g, right? Negative 10 is greater than or equal to g. And if I wanted to graph that, how would I do that? I put negative 10 in the middle. This demands a filled-in circle. What number could I put right here that would make this a true statement? Well, wouldn't it have to be a number that's smaller than negative 10, since negative 10 is bigger than it most of the time, since negative 10 is bigger than it? So that's going to be shading this side again. These are the numbers that are smaller than negative 10. I'm going to put negative 11 there. I'm going to put negative 9 there. Cute little arrowheads. We're done. Make sense? Let's try another one. What if I put something like negative 13 is less than k, and then in regards to k, we're going to subtract a negative 16. Well, the first thing I notice is subtracting a negative. Do you remember how to handle that? Well, what's the rule about subtraction? To subtract, you add the opposite of second number. So this problem is really k plus 16. And so we really have negative 13 is less than k plus 16. Now, how am I going to get k by itself? Well, at this point, I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides of the equation, because that's going to get me k by itself. And k, and how do we do this? Isn't that negative 13 plus a negative 16? Because subtracting is adding the opposite of the second number. Oh, I don't want an equal sign here. I want a less than symbol. And so I get negative 29 being less than k. Now, how do I graph that? Well, I'm going to put negative 29 here. I'm going to put an open circle there. What number would make this a true statement? Negative 29 is smaller than what numbers? Negative 29 is smaller than what numbers? Those would be the numbers over here, right? If negative 29 is smaller than the answer, then the answer has to be these numbers on the right-hand side. So I'm going to shade this right-hand side. I'm going to put negative 28 here and negative 30 here, and I'm done with that problem. Okay. Now how about something like this? P plus a negative 8 is greater than or equals to negative 12. How would I handle that? Well, what's the opposite of adding a negative 8? What's the opposite of adding a negative 8? Isn't the opposite of this subtracting a negative 8? Yeah. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do it to both sides. Here's the original problem. We're going to subtract negative 8 from it, but we're also going to subtract negative 8 from the other side as well. And what in the world is subtracting a negative 8? Isn't subtraction really adding the opposite of the second number? So don't we really have this plus this, which is negative 4? And so that means we're left with P being greater than or equals to negative 4, aren't we? Yeah. P is greater than or equals to negative 4. Now, how would I graph that? Well, put negative 4 in the middle. I'm going to have a filled-in circle there. I'm going to put negative 5 here and negative 3 here. And what numbers are greater than negative 4? On this number line, what numbers are greater than negative 4? Well, isn't that the numbers over here that are greater than negative 4? So I shade the right-hand side this time. Right? Great. Let's try another one. How about something like one with a fraction? Won't that be fun? 1 7/8, and that is less than d plus negative 2. 1 7/8 is less than d plus a negative 2. Well, how do I get rid of that adding of negative 2? What's the opposite of adding negative 2? I can talk about it two ways. Well, the opposite of this is subtracting negative 2, or the opposite of this is adding a positive 2. It doesn't really matter. Both of these are opposites of adding a negative 2. So, 1 7/8 minus a negative 2 is less than d plus a negative 2 minusing a negative 2, right? Plus adding a negative 2 is the opposite of subtracting a negative 2. So I get d over here. The big question is, what happens over here? What is subtracting of a negative? Well, the rule about subtraction says subtraction is adding the opposite of that second number. So I really end up with 3 7/8 being less than the value of d. Oh boy, how do I do this one? Well, I'm going to write a 3 here, and I'm going to write a 4 here. And where in the world would 3 7/8 be on this number line? Wouldn't 3 7/8 be really close to 4? Because I'd have to divide this into 8 sections. So there's 4 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to divide each section into a section, right? So now I've got 8 sections, and 3 7/8 would be right here. And that right here should be an open circle because it's a less than symbol, right? And the question is, am I going to shade the left or the right? I don't know. What number could I put here that would make 3 7/8 less than it? 3 7/8 is less than this number or these numbers. Well, it's these over here. So I'm going to shade the right-hand side because a number like 4 or a number like 5 or a number like 6 or a number like 7 would all make this a true statement, right? 3 7/8 is less than 4. 3 7/8 is less than 5. 3 7/8 is less than 6. All of these numbers make that a true statement. Okay, let's try another one. This time let's throw a decimal value in here. How about x minus 0.9 is greater than a negative 4.8? How am I going to do that? Well, if I want to get x by itself, I'm going to have to do the opposite of subtracting 0.9. What would that be? Well, wouldn't it be adding 0.9? And don't I need to do it to both sides of the equation? Over here, I'm left with x. This is the tricky part. I'm adding a positive to a negative number. And when I do that, I get a negative 3.7 if I follow the rules. Now, how do I graph that? Well, I'm in the negative zone, so I'm going to put negative 3 right here. I'm going to put negative 4 right here. Where would negative 3.7 be? Let's divide this into 10 sections. there's my negative 3.5 right there, because that's the midpoint, negative 3.5. So that's be negative 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, negative 3.4. This would be negative 3.6, negative 3.7, negative 3.8, negative 3.9, and finally the number 4. So negative 3.7 is right here. That's negative 3.7. And I got to draw that line a little bigger maybe. I'm going to use an open circle because it's a greater than. And the question is now, what number is greater than this? What number is greater than this? Do I shade to the left or do I shade to the right? What number is greater than this? Isn't it all the numbers on the right-hand side again? Any number that's to the right is going to be bigger than the numbers that are on the left. So I'm done with that one. Okay, I hope this helps you, 8th graders. Bye-bye.